Well, hello, action takers. We are back after day 4 of the 5-day Unshakable Challenge by Tony Robbins. Teresa Merrick and me, David B., your co-hosts of the IDK WTF I Was Doing podcast, have been watching side by side along with over 1 million others. And today, we all experienced the single most significant lesson so far: how to be worthy of love. Ask yourself, is there anything actually more valuable in life than healthy relationships? You'll be hearing from Teresa as she breaks down everything from today's event quickly and efficiently, because we know you're busy, but this information is too valuable to miss. So hit that follow button, get ready to write down some notes, and let's get all of this done together. Have you ever started something new and didn't finish it?
You were excited. You invested time and money.
You got stuck.
I'm Teresa Merrick.
And I'm David B.
And this is the podcast with two ADHD entrepreneurs, and we've been there.
And worked with hundreds of people in the exact same place.
The IDK WTF I Was Doing podcast will take you away from feelings of frustration and overwhelm.
And lead you to the clarity you need to take action and get shit done.
Listen today, because it's important to admit that no one really knows
what the fuck they're doing.
I am Teresa Merrick, if you don't know me, one of the hosts of the IDK WTF podcast. And I am super excited to share with you all about what Tony Robbins shared about relationships. I seriously have 4.5 pages of notes. So you are getting the Cliff Notes version, and I'm going to give you what I took away. It was a long day today. It was like 3 hours, but it is packed full of so much goodness. All of his episodes are. And if you're busy like we are, feel free to just check out our recaps. We are going to try and give you the best nuggets possible. So I'm going to jump right in. So like I said, we talked about relationships today. And what Tony started off saying is that the most pleasure and the most pain come from our intimate, close relationships. All of the tips he gave could be applied to any of our life relationships, but the most significant ones are those intimate relationships that we create. So 2 of the biggest fears that we have as humans are, 1, that I'm not enough in any way. I'm not good enough for any reason you can think of. We don't like feeling that. And an intimate relationship can often have us magnify those things, and we feel like we're not a good enough partner, that we don't make enough money, that we don't have enough intimacy, that we don't do all of these things enough. And so that can really put a stress on us in intimate relationships. And one of our other biggest fears, our second biggest fear in this case, is that I'll lose love. So it's not so much, some people will say they fear love, or maybe not even fear love. They're like, I don't want to be in love. I hate love. But the truth is, everybody loves being in love. It feels good when you're in love. The part that sucks is when you lose love. So we don't want to lose our love. It's just too painful. And as humans, we're designed for connections. Tony even talked about how human babies need touch and connection. And if they don't have that, it has been proven years ago. They did a study back before it was not allowed to do testing on human babies, and babies died. It's called failure to thrive if they are just left alone. We need connection as humans. So the biggest mistake going into a relationship, Tony says, is when we go into a relationship to get something. When we're looking to get something from a relationship, it's just a mistake. It's never going to work. We need to do is go into a relationship. We need to give. We want to be looking at what we can give. The purpose of a relationship is to share the joys and struggles in our life. We want to magnify the good, support the tough, because we're not meant to be alone. And Tony does address in this that this is really about the human experience. He talks a lot about masculine and feminine energy. So it's not necessarily man versus woman. It goes beyond all lines of sexual orientation and your gender identity and all those things, because all of us have masculine and feminine energy. And so he does speak in terms of like men and women a lot, but he does really also reiterate that this is everyone and we can all relate to different pieces of relationships in the masculine and feminine. So what Tony says is we want to pretend like we're foreign to this, we're an alien, and not bring all our baggage from relationships while we're looking at some of this stuff. So I'm going to invite you to do the same thing. We're going to look for patterns. What are our patterns in relationships? What does that look like versus all the things that are loaded and the emotions that we feel? Because those bog us down and cause us not to be able to be objective. So what you want to do in a relationship, like number one thing he talked about is Tony says, take 100% responsibility and ownership in your relationship. You're going to give 100 out of 100. There is no 50-50. You must own that relationship. And relationships are a key part of your life experience. He talked about how there are businessmen who, and he's written a book about this, and he's a lot of times these billionaires that are self-made don't spend time to focus on a relationship. And it's a really big missing because nobody gets to the end of their life and wishes that they had worked more. I'm sure you've heard that before because it's a common thing that people say. It's what's important, the relationships you build. So let's see. One of the biggest challenges in relationships is negative stacking. So what that is where someone does something and it's kind of annoying. You don't really say anything and they do it again and they do it again. And there's just little things. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. And then you snap and you're aggressive and you're grumpy. And it's stacking all the negative because all in that moment you see is all the negative stuff that person did. So what you want to do is utilize positive stacking. This is actually what you do at the beginning of relationships because you wouldn't get into a relationship if you didn't completely adore, dote on, want to be with that person. And people around you are like, gag me. I don't want to hear any more about how great your new partner is because all you're doing is focusing on the positive. Tony talks so much about this every day. He talks about what you're focusing on. That's how your life is going to be. He refers back a lot to the last couple of days in that in a relationship, it's what we focus on. So if we focus on all the little negative annoying, it's going to stack up and it's going to explode. If you focus on all the positive things, you're going to get that lovey, yummy feeling that you want to have in a relationship. Of course, this does not mean there's not conflict or disagreements or things that happen. We did this really cool exercise where we imagined. So if you take a little bit of time to do this, imagine what it would be like. Go back to a moment when you had a really beautiful, intimate moment with your current partner or in a past relationship, if you're not in a relationship. And how did you feel in your body? And it could be, it could be a sexual moment. It could be just an intimate moment, a loving moment, a playful, something that was really connected with your partner. And it's what would you be willing to do to have this feeling all the time? Maybe not every minute, but like every day. What would you be willing to do to fill your life with these amazing connected moments with the person you love? Tony talks about 2 forms of communication. So I'm just speeding through, guys, because there's so much good stuff. So 2 forms of communication. That's it. A loving or a cry for help. And Tony goes, the cry for help does not usually sound like a cry in our mind. It sounds angry. It sounds pissed off. It sounds like, oh my God, you are so annoying today. Stop talking. You didn't take the trash out. It sounds like irritation, but it's a cry for help. So you want to look at that and consider that how you're responding and how you can respond if your partner is like that. I mean, the first response might not to be like, well, it was your turn to take the trash out. Look at your own response because maybe they're going through something that doesn't even have anything to do with you. Doesn't mean you should be treated poorly. You're smart. You know the difference. So, and Tony says, when you start measuring what am I getting or not getting, that the state of your relationship is in a bad state. A great relationship is when you want to be better for yourself and for your partner. When your partner inspires you to want to be a better person. That is where it's at. It's all where it's at. All right. Expectations. Write this down. Expectations destroy relationships. Full stop. Trade your expectations for appreciation. So 95% of success in a relationship is selection. And Tony was laughing. He goes, yeah, I know. I wasn't there before a lot of you picked your partners, but that's not what I'm talking about. So selection is the part of you that you're bringing to your relationship. So it's 95% of success in your relationship is about who I bring. Who am I bringing to the table today? Earlier this week, Tony talked about different parts of our relationship: the warrior, the lover, the magician, the queen or king, the sovereign, right? So he's saying, who are you bringing in this relationship? Are you bringing the lover, the magician, the playful part? Or are you bringing, that negative, heavy, upset, disgruntled part of your relationship or part of your identity? Are you bringing that to your relationship? Because what you bring is going to create that success in your relationship. So then some of you might be going, well, what happens if I change and I'm owning 100% and my person doesn't watch Tony and he's not going to participate in this program? Well, we're in a cybernetic loop. We affect each other cyclically. So if I am changing my state, which I'm referring back to some of the other days. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out if you want to know what I'm talking about. But if I'm changing my state and my mentality and how I am creating meaning, then I'm going to affect my partner. And it can be in a very positive way or in a negative way. But that comes back to owning it 100%. All right. So I could just go on and on. All right. I'm going to try and highlight kind of the 3 main takeaways and the tips around them really quickly. So Tony talks about how the human mind does 3 things when a situation happens at any given time. It distorts it, it deletes it, and it generalizes. This is just because we can't process everything. He talks about how at any given moment, I can feel the sensation of my clothes or my hair or, touching my body, but my brain just deletes it. If I think about it, I can feel it. But if I don't think about it, I'm not thinking of it. My brain deletes that information. It's not important because we're processing. We only pay attention to and register the few things we focus on. So it's really important to know that our brain is deleting a lot of information. And this is how we end up missing communication with our intimate partners, is because we're distorting a memory. Potentially, we remember it. And actually, Tony referenced this and I thought it was really, really poignant. Tell a lie big enough, loud enough, and long enough, and people will believe it. That was Hitler's sentiment. Not a good sentiment, but it's true. If you tell a lie big enough, loud enough, and long enough, people start to believe it. So you can distort your view of your partner, because if you're telling yourself and you're changing their identity in your mind, because they never take the trash out and they're just so lazy, you've made this partner who you love lazy. You've now given them that identity in your mind, and you're looking for every time that you could call them lazy, even though it's a lie. They're not lazy. They forgot to take out the trash, or it's just not their priority, right? So we really have to look at that. And then our brain, again, and I've said this, it's generalizing. That's what I'm saying. When it always happens, nobody always does anything. That's not true. It's a generalization. It's just how we process. So we just need to be aware of that. Next big thing is the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So this is the Gottmans. If you haven't heard of John Gottman and his wife, I can't think of her name, but the Gottmans, they are very well known for their relationship books. They have seminars, they have blogs, they're everywhere, and they have really great information. So Tony tells us about the 4 horsemen. The first one is criticism. So criticizing is different than voicing what you're feeling. When you're in a blame mode, your energy goes down. And we know that the only way to shift everything is to pop our energy up. Criticizing and blaming is going to sink you down. It doesn't work. You want to use I statements. You want to talk about how you feel. And it's not, I feel this way because you did such and such and such. This will kill your relationship. Criticism will kill your relationship. Number 2 is contempt. So contempt is disrespect, being sarcastic, having eye-rolling body language where you think you're superior and you know better than your partner. So contempt is number 2. And the opposite of contempt, the way to be, is to appreciate. Appreciate your partner's good qualities. Be grateful for them. Tell them that you appreciate them and what for. Number 3, defensiveness. I am super guilty of this one, guys. I mean, I've done all of these things, but I know I can be very defensive. So number 3, defensiveness, making excuses, not owning your mistakes, reversing blame, being the victim. Like, definitely the way to beat this. Own responsibility, take responsibility, accept your partner's perspective, offer an apology for when you're wrong, and agree to disagree. I have a really hard time with that one because I want us to agree on everything, and that's just not going to happen. You're going to disagree with your partner. Not everything is going to be 100% aligned. It's just not going to happen. Even with the person who maybe your values align with in life, some small details, like that's what makes life interesting, right? We're different than our partners. So agree to disagree. And number 4 is stonewalling. So that's withdrawal, shutting down, closing yourself off, tuning someone out, turning away, becoming busy. That's just like the shutdown wall. This is actually the one I do the least. The other 3 I do a lot more. So Tony says evaluate where you fall on that. How often do you do these things? So that way you can see where you're at in your relationship right now. So the opposite of stonewalling is going to be to take a pause and change your state. Self-soothe, take a little break, spend some time doing something that's going to get you in the right psychological state to have a conversation to where you're not closing yourself off from your relationship. The last biggest thing, so I'm going to share the last biggest thing about relationships, and then I'm going to say a couple words for the single people because they did talk about single people a little bit too. So Dr. Julie Colwell, she wrote the Relationship Skills Workbook, and she has a way of communicating when you're upset that will basically allow you to never argue again. And she said the only way that you can argue is if the content is actually arguable. So how I feel, if I feel a certain way without blaming you, that's not arguable. If I say, I'm really angry at you, that's not arguable. Someone can't tell you you're not angry, right? So they use the acronym SEW, S-E-W. And it's the way to have an inarguable conversation about the important stuff. So number 1 is sensation. So I'm feeling this way in my body right now. I'm feeling really tight in my chest and it feels like 100 bricks is sitting on me. And then you go to emotion. Number 2 is emotion. So my sensation is I'm feeling this tightness and there's 100 bricks on me. And my emotion is that I am really sad and I'm really scared that we'll lose our relationship. I don't know, I'm making something up. And number 3 is then to state what you want or you don't want. So I'm really sad and scared, and I really want you to own these chores. I want you to own taking the trash out every week so that it gets picked up by the trash company. I mean, this is like a little thing, but like Tony actually, he showed this amazing clip of him in a live studio audience and this couple who did this process together. It was like a 20-minute clip and it was so powerful. So I'm not going to try and recreate it, but it's such a simple process. And also in the emotion in number 2, so the 5 emotions of SEW are sad is number 1. Number 2 is mad or angry. Number 3 is scared or fearful. Number 4 is glad, which includes happy and loving. Number 5 is excited or surprised, which can include aroused, sexual, that type. So literally, when you only use those 5 core emotions, sad, mad, scared, glad, or excited, to describe your emotion, it gets very clear. Because he said frustration, overwhelm, there's so many words that can be convoluted in our relationship. And so Tony just says, keep with this core 5 that Dr. Julie Colwell shared And it's going to really make those things clear for your relationships. I wish I could say more on that. Seriously. If you have a chance, go find that little clip in the replay right after you're done listening to me, because it was just so powerful. Okay. Then Tony brought out Sage Robbins, his wife, and they talked a lot. And one of the most important things that I think Sage said was giving up too soon and expectations are what kills off love. And I thought that was really powerful. And both of them agreed you have to prioritize your relationship over everything, over your kids, over your job, over everything. And that doesn't mean if you have children, it doesn't mean to neglect your children. It means you're showing your children a loving relationship that's prioritized. And the more loving and caring you can be with your partner and that strong relationship that your children get to see is actually a huge benefit to them as well. So something to consider for all you parents. I know I have a hard time with that sometimes. So really important. And then shout out to all the single folks out there. You are important too. What Tony says that he did, and this is how he created what he wanted, is he wrote this want list. He goes, I wrote for pages about all the things I wanted in a relationship. He goes, this was while I was going through divorce. I went through everything. Then I went back through it and narrowed it down to a must list. Like, what are the top things? Because these like pages is not going to happen. So here's my must list. And he said, who do I need to be to attract that person? How can I show up so that that must list shows up back for me? And then he read that every single day. He said, I used to read it every single day before I went out into the world. And I was looking and dating and trying to find the right person. And he actually met his now wife of 24 years, 6 months before he started dating her and they got into a relationship. And so he also said, then you want to be, and Sage said, be really, really present when you're looking. If you want a relationship, because she had sort of independently done a very similar thing as Tony. And when they both kind of looked and discovered that they were right there in front of each other, it was a really beautiful encounter. Oh, there is one more thing I want to share, and then I'm done. So you want to look out for the 3 U's and the 3 C's. And both masculine energy and feminine energy have all of these, some more than others, but you really want to look out for these things in your relationship so that you can create clarity and have good communication around them. So you want to look for the 3 U's. Number 1 is unseen. If your partner is feeling unseen, you want to see them. Number 2, they don't feel understood. So the second U is not understood. So, even if you're struggling, even if you're on different side, being like, yeah, that really must have been hard for you. Acknowledging them and trying to understand them. Very important. Number 3, unsafe. You don't want your partner to feel unsafe. And this is often a feminine energy, very common, because a lot of times people who are in a more masculine energy don't feel unsafe regularly, but feminine energy, I am more feminine energy than masculine, and definitely just out in the world, there are times I feel unsafe. So it often comes up more frequently in feminine energy. All right. And then the 3 C's that you want to look for are criticized. So you don't want to criticize in your relationship. Like I said earlier, criticism kills. The second one is closed. Don't be closed. Don't shut yourself off. That doesn't work in your relationship. And if your partner is that way, you got to look to get it open again. And the third C is controlled. Nobody wants to be controlled. If you're being controlling of yourself, of them, if they're being controlling doesn't work. So unseen, not understood, and unsafe, and criticized, closed, and controlled. Those are all things that are not going to work in any relationship. Some lend more to masculine or feminine energy. And so you want to look at yourself in those situations. Tony also said, rate yourself again. How often do I do these things in my relationship or in the past relationships? What can I work on to be better in those moments? Say you're in your space, you're in your head, and you're like, okay, I'm just being very controlling. I'm being controlling of myself. So I don't need to bring anybody else into that bubble. You can have that exact dialogue with your partner. I am being super controlling and like anal about this situation. I'm going to go take a quick break and reset. And it's that simple. So you find the ways that you can move through these situations. Oh my gosh, that was so much. And it was so powerful. Thank you so much for joining in. We will be back tomorrow. We will have the final recap because tomorrow is day 5. And please do go back and watch the first 3 if you haven't. Take a listen, however you're digesting this information. David and I are super excited to be sharing Tony's Unshakable Challenge. And I hope that you're able to take some really great information. And if you got any nuggets from this, please share. I would love to hear them. Thanks, guys. Have you ever started something new that you were really excited about and invested time or money into, but after doing it for a while, you reach a point and you just feel like, I have no idea what the F I'm doing?
There's that bubbling up of frustration because you're not quite as good as you thought you'd be, or it's nowhere near as easy as you expected. Then suddenly, a wave of guilt comes at the same time, and you don't really want to or feel like you can express this to anyone.
Having a dream you want to accomplish can be very sad and isolating. It's lonely because visionaries tend to see the world the way that it could be instead of settling for the way the world currently is, like most people do.
We believe this so deeply that we wrote a book with the exact 4 steps to help.
This guide is designed to take you out of that feeling of frustration and overwhelm and lead you into the calmness and clarity that you need to reach the life that you know in your heart you're destined to have.
If you've started a project or a goal but have stopped, gotten stuck, or are starting to feel burned out, this is 100% the book for you.
Go to idkwtfpodcast.com today and download your digital copy with the coupon code ACTION to get it on us, because we want to join you and be your supportive friends and partners throughout your journey.
It's only free for a limited time if you use the code ACTION by going to our website, idkwtfpodcast.com.
Check it out today and let's get unstuck together.